Turning 20 feels like you've crossed some invisible line. There's some subtle, sometimes not so subtle pressure in your head to figure it all out. Because these days when you go on LinkedIn, Instagram, YouTube, X, wherever you go, you see founders my age, 20, getting into Y Combinator, growing massive followings, and all I could think was, why can't I do that? And maybe you've thought that too. I remember last year seeing all those LinkedIn posts and X posts and just looking at them and being like, damn, I wish I could do that too. And at that moment, I would just mutter that they were just lucky that they got there first. But now reflecting on it, I've realized that maybe it's not just luck, or not the kind of luck I thought it was. So in this video, I want to dive into 3 lessons that I'm going to take into my 20s, which I probably did not follow in my teenage years. I used to think luck was random like magic, like a stroke of lightning. But after reading Obvious Choices by Jonathan Goodman, I realized that luck is more like a tide. There's a high tide and a low tide, and oftentimes we just see those two extremes. We don't see the tide rising inch by inch, reaching your knees, your chest, and people looking around going, whoa, how did that high tide even come in? Because oftentimes we ignore the small inch by inch rise of the tide itself. So that's the first lesson I'm taking into my 20s. Don't expect the rewards of the game if you don't show up every single day consistently doing something about it. Now, let's move on to the second lesson. Perfectionism is the end-all of momentum. This lesson hits hard. So last year, I had a ton of videos that were stuck on the rack. Some were edited, some were in the idea phase, some were scripted, but I just wouldn't make them or publish them. And I realized the reason for that was because I was noticing small minor indiscrepancies like, oh, the transition wasn't clean enough, or oh, my voice cracked here, or my voice was off in this video. I realized that there's this knowing doing gap, information execution gap, whatever fancy term you want to give to it. The basic premise is that when you start out something, like when I started this YouTube channel, you don't know much, so you just execute and you learn along the way. But soon you start getting interested in it, so you start reading more about it, watching videos, watching podcasts, what have you. And eventually you have so much information that guides execution that it becomes more like a prison that you built for yourself. And I realized that I've reached that point where I've kind of binge watched way too much YouTube about making content and not enough about actually making the content itself. So that's something that I made a mistake with this year, and that's why I'm changing into my 20s. Don't let that information and execution gap become so large that your information actually becomes a hindrance rather than a benefit to you. If I'm being honest, I spent most of last year playing it safe. I made the exact same kind of video, which is a day in the life video, because I knew that they worked, I could make them, and they got decentish reactions to talk about. So I stopped experimenting and trying out new things, some ideas failing, some succeeding to guide my new direction. But then I realized in the last semester, I did make a change somewhere, and that was in my studying. Rather than having my measure being what the output was, I measured how confident I am with the knowledge. Can I answer this question with full understanding or no? And that made a huge difference. I kind of enjoyed studying more, and as a result got better outputs for it too. That's something I'm going to take with me into the next semester, but I realized, why can't I apply this to everything else? And looking back on it, that is exactly what happened. While I was reading Obvious Choices by Jonathan Goodman, he got this point about Goodhart's law, which basically says a measure fails to be a good measure if it becomes a target. And that's why I realized what happened with YouTube and Instagram at least. Initially when I started, the aim was I just have to get this one video out a week and that's a success, something I can't control. But when 1 or 2 videos became really good and went up and got about 20,000 views, I think, then that distorted the entire measure. Now it became about views instead. And Jonathan Goodman also talks about that in his book, where he says one outlier has a potential to disfigure your entire reality as well. So now looking back at that aspect, my new goal for YouTube and Instagram is just to get 1 video out every 2 weeks. Something I can control, something I can measure. And the views can handle themselves. And if you're watching this, well, thank you so much for clicking on this video. It means a lot. So that's the third lesson I'm taking with me. If you're setting up a measure, ensure that it does not become a target, because then it'll be a bad measure. And secondly, ensure that the measure is something that you can control and not something outside of your control itself. If there's one thing I've learned from 19, it's this. Don't try to figure everything out. Just keep showing up every single day. Don't let perfection come in the way of you trying out stuff. And don't play it safe. Experiment, fail, try again, and learn. And finally, let the tide rise, 1 quiet inch at a time.